Well, talk about wanting to get it off your chest. I mean, it's a big one tonight. Saving Doctor Who, the RTD way or the right way, or am I just being very naughty with that thumbnail? But the point is, lads, saving Doctor Who. Well, the ratings aren't looking too hot, are they? There seems to be also lack of interest or engagement in the series. They seem to be desperately making so many trailers. I do almost feel a sense of desperation. It's getting ridiculed in some of the press as very woke or whatever. It's ridiculed. I just have a bad vibe. Although I did like the look of the season 2 trailer in how it was made and stuff. But I just don't think we're in the right place. Hence why I've said, saving Doctor Who, the RTD way or the right way. So what we're going to talk about tonight, just so those who are watching us, is we're going to reflect and consider, did RTD get anything right in this season 1 and 2 and specials? Where did he go wrong? What can save the series? Because it clearly isn't in the level that the BBC want, really, when they tell us they want to go global and mega. What are your thoughts, Daryl?
Where did he go wrong? It's hard to say until you see this series how I suspect they've done a lot of editing to maybe up the special effects and maybe cut a few characters down that might have not gone down too well. That's my feeling. So until it airs and you see exactly what they've done with it in the post edit, I think it's hard to say for sure. I don't think it's going to be like season 1 because I think they will have taken stock of what's been the reaction. I think they will try and fix it in the edit.
Bangs, explosions, and wallops. What about that, Sean? So. Yeah?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, great distraction, Sean. That's what you want.
Nice to meet you, Daryl. I completely disagree. I think I'd love them to have tried to do that. I personally think that if anything, it'll double down. It'll be exactly the same as the first series. It will. I can't begin to fathom the horrificness that is about to come our way, but here we go. It's like being at the top of a very high roller coaster. Your stomach's about to drop out from under you. You know exactly what's coming, but there's no turning back now. So,
well, one thing I've been advertising all night is Daryl Joyce, who has got his YouTube channel, as a lot of people may know, and of course he's got some great videos there on using his illustrations about how Doctor Who could be. And I think there's enough trailers going on. And before I bring Jeremy and Christine in, I think we've got a version of how Doctor Who could look if Daryl Joyce was the showrunner. Shall we take a look? There you go. Well done, Gerald. I mean, Christian, would you like Doctor Who like that?
That's what I want to see. I've said it before and I'll say it again. To go Disney is basically to go soft, virtually to go camp. What I want is a return to form, and what Daryl provides is genuinely in the spirit of Doctor Who as we know it. That's what I want to see.
Jeremy, what do you think of that?
Oh yeah, very much so. I mean, it's a shame. The pity the BBC animations were not like that. You know, that'd be very good. You know,
that was the first thing I said every time I see anything to do with the Daryl. And Daryl obviously has been great to be on before, and we've looked at his illustrations. And just, I mean, Daryl, before we get into all the criteria about where we think Doctor Who's gone right and wrong and all the rest of it, obviously you have a feeling about this, because when you illustrate a Sea Devil or a Sontaran or a Mondasian Cyberman, you don't just give us what we had before. You have a version. So there must be a sense of tone, style that you think we should be doing.
I've always thought, you know, Doctor Who is like it's a drama. It's a dark, scary drama for kids. You know, it can be creepy and atmospheric. You don't have to make everything, you know, safe space friendly. You know, this is where we've gone these days. And I just think it could be a lot more engaging than it is. But I think one of the problems for me is the 45-minute format. You have to wrap everything up so quickly that you cannot really build a convincing world. All you've got is the Doctor and the Companion. That you can develop the Doctor and the Companion, but you can't develop much else around them, really. It's all got to be wrapped up, and it's all become a bit of a tearjerker in the last 10 minutes. They always do this tearjerker thing now. And I think that's why it's become so limited, because there aren't that many things you can do. Over 20 years, they just keep revisiting the same sort of storylines. So I think when it was devised in 1963, I think they came up with the perfect plan. And I think that's basically what we need to go back to, in my opinion.
Okay, and don't worry, a lot of opinions on this one tonight. We're going to do an autopsy, really, of what we think's going right, what we think's going wrong, if we were showrunners, what we would hope season 2 would look like, and what content it would focus on. So that's what we're doing, and I'm incorporating slides from different shows in the past. So we've discussed 10 mistakes that crashed Doctor Who in the ratings. So we've kind of been in this ballpark, and the ratings are the ratings nonetheless. So of course, I'm just showing people, I'm not just making this up. And when I've actually done a review of each episode in season 1, the scores on the doors, on the sarcophagus, they didn't reveal that people were happy, because people were given, I had panelists of 5 to 6 people. So those scores are out of 180. It's not, you know, it's fallen flat. So we are tonight going to be talking about, has RTD got it right? Where's he got it wrong? Can we save Doctor Who? What would you do to save Doctor Who? Okay, as simple as that. So the first one, I think, Jeremy, is, I think, by the nature of what I'm saying, I think RTD has failed to re-establish the original spirit of the show, and I think that's a mistake.
Yeah, I agree on that one. And certainly, just looking at where he's going with it, he's certainly gone straight off at a tangent with this show. I mean, certainly the bioregeneration nonsense was really a big mistake.
Yes, and don't worry, that will be one of the items, I tell you. Sean, what is the original spirit of the show? Am I pushing this too hard?
I mean, you know, as Christian said at the beginning about the show going soft, you know, the show needs some serious Viagra. It needs to toughen itself up. It's not serious. It doesn't take itself seriously. I know you've probably got it up. That was one of my main points to you when you asked me for some pointers.
Yeah.
It's that the show doesn't take itself seriously, and it's like, well, if you're not going to be bothered and put the effort in, then why should I? Like, if I came out of this show and you were, you know, half baking it and you weren't really bothered and you weren't doing it properly, you were just kind of sitting there expecting it all to go perfectly. Because I'm Brendan and I'm the savior of YouTube. Everyone I'd be like, well, I'm not going back on that again.
Oh,
because he's not taking it seriously. So why should I bother?
Give me a soundbite now.
I agree. It does feel like a pastiche.
I mean, look, I mean,
yeah. Go on, Daryl.
Yeah, I mean, I'm, sorry, mate, go on.
And I was just saying, I agree. It does feel like a pastiche rather than the real thing to me.
Yeah, because just before Sean comes in again, but this is what I mean. I mean, I'm looking at the trailers, and I've got lots of ways I can unpack the comment you're making there, Sean. And I don't want to throw them all now because it would just be too many slides, so to speak. But for example, as Daryl was saying, these 45-minute episode structures that we've had for 20 years now, I think there may be another formula that needs to be tried, because it does seem to me that you are diminishing Doctor Who to the point where I call it a Benny Hill speed episode, where basically we just race to the finish. And as Daryl was saying, then there's some sort of tearjerker or apparently an emotional, impactful moment, but that's it. But you race to it. And the forced Benny Hill pace, to me, makes it look unserious, because they chuck a quick joke in, and as you were saying at the beginning, Daryl, about having explosions and whistles and try and distract us from the fact there's no content. Why is RTD so scared of actually allowing a 4-episode story to develop over a series of weeks? Is it actually cowardice that he's scared that if it's not a good story, you'll lose the audience? Whereas instead he goes for the bang, 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 bang. There you go. And if it doesn't work, there's always next week. Yeah. Sean?
I mean, this is what really gets me. I mean, this is the same guy who wrote, Tortured Children of Earth. Now, whatever you thought of the first couple of series of Torchwood, and it took a while to find its feet, I admit that. And the 4th series, which was like a transatlantic thing, wasn't everyone's cup of tea or cup of joe, right? But on that 3rd series of Torchwood, which was a 5, I think it was over consecutive nights.
Yes.
It was on BBC One,
Yep.
and it absolutely did amazing. It is still the best Torchwood. I know that's not Doctor Who, so people could be a bit like, oh, that's a bit of a... But I'm just making the point that that's the same writer in the same world, albeit a bit darker. So he's done it in the past. So what on earth's gone wrong? I mean, it doesn't feel like the same writer. Or is it that people were holding him back in a good way, in terms of, he had people above him, a bit of an authority to say, no, rein that bit in, calm that down.
I think he was
don't
probably...
do that. Because I don't know about you, but that first series looked cheap to me. Didn't look good. It didn't look like it had loads of money thrown at it.
I think, Christian, that I think in 2005, 6, 7, 8, RTD was, well, especially in the early days, was more nervous and cautious and played a little bit more to what we recognize as the formula, with a few tweaks. But I think one thing, Christian, and I'm not guiding you, Christian, you can tell me where you want to go, but part of this kind of taking it seriously is he decided not really to resolve all the Chibnall chaos. Now, some fans would say that's probably good, gloss over it. But, you could argue that. I mean, Christian, on this whole idea of the original spirit of the show, am I pushing too hard on that? Because we are 2025. Things do change, I keep getting told.
No, I don't think you are pushing too hard. The spirit of the show, which has high stakes, high investment from the audience, very accessible to a broad array of viewers, highly regarded, that's something to strive for. When RTD first started, I think that he was channeled. His skill set was focused, and he could not go outside the certain boundaries. So he did touch on a few issues that were of importance to him, but they were glancing blows, and he was able to do something successful. This time, all of the restrictions are off. He can do whatever he wants. He feels that he can do whatever he wants. He feels like he has that much control. As a consequence, he's indulging himself, and he's indulging himself in a way that damages the property. I'd say we need to go back to world building again. we're looking back at the classic series, and we can look back at a certain number of stories a year, 5 stories, 6 stories a year, stretched over, 24 slots. You can do that. You can actually do some world building and create investment. And just as Daryl has pointed out, when we're in the process of just getting in and getting out, you got 45 minutes to get in and get out. You can do something with your focused characters, but there's no opportunity to world build. And there's really no opportunity to create stakes unless the stakes are entirely related to the Doctor and his companion and their emotional reaction to something. That's not going to keep the show going. That's a very limited way to go.
You see, part of my understanding of this, and it kind of feeds into it, yeah. And Daryl, you've referred to this, and I know Jeremy, you would be onto this one. It needs to be back onto that escapist formula. But on top of that, that's why I think this is a mistake going into the fantasy genre nonsense. We've talked about taking the show seriously, but part of doing that is get the kids behind the sofa, scare the kids, and give it a much darker tone. I think all these things come together, Jeremy.
Without a doubt. I mean, it's certainly lost its edge, and it's no longer the show that it used to be. And it's interesting because if Russell T Davies had started in 2005 and produced this, the show wouldn't have lasted this length of time. There's no doubt about that.
No. I mean, how dark would you go, Daryl, with this? I look at some of your illustrations. You're currently, aren't you, illustrating cliffhangers from the classic series, aren't you?
Yeah.
Are you replicating the cliffhangers, or are you adding a darkness, a little bit more edge?
I suppose I'm expanding them a little bit, but I'm not changing them in any way. I'm not trying to change the tone of them. But my illustrations are quite dark and moody. Sometimes I don't print too well because they're so dark. They look better on the screen. But yeah, I'm not changing. I mean, I wonder if maybe if television executives are scared about frightening kids, the safe space sort of thing, maybe it's time to try something new, like they did in 1970 when they almost got rid of Doctor Who, but they brought it back and it was more a bit more Quatermass or a bit more Doomwatch in season 7. And I wonder if maybe maybe they should just give it a break for 2 or 3 years and come back with something different, and maybe put it slightly later in the evening.
Yeah. And
try to scare people again and say, well, kids can watch it. They're not excluded from watching it, but maybe aim it at the established audience, the audience of people that, the potentially in their 50s and 60s as well as young kids.
Yeah. And
make it a bit scarier. And if kids want to watch it, they can. It's up to their parents to let them watch it. But maybe just make it a bit, because there are things like over the last 10 or 15 years, you've had much darker television series, and I think kids are a bit more used to that sort of stuff. So I think there is an audience, but they're just not looking for it, are they? They're not looking in the right place.
Well, I find it fascinating. Go on, Jeremy, I'll bring you in, don't worry. But the government of the day is talking about showing every kid in school adolescence because of the Prevent program and toxic masculinity. So they're not scared of showing them that. And I think a lot of teachers have got question marks about that. Meanwhile, we're not allowed to show a dark version of Doctor Who.
Yeah, I mean, years ago, as I said, in 1970, they had Doctor Who at 5:15. So there's some pretty scary episodes in season 7.
Yeah.
And then you'd have a Tom and Jerry cartoon before it, and then Doctor Who, and then Dad's Army. So there's no reason why they couldn't put on a much darker toned Doctor Who of a similar vein at an earlier time,
But we keep getting told by RTD these are dark times, and to help the children with dark times, they need an emotional doctor. That's what he said. And I'm actually thinking, well, number one, I argue about whether they're dark times compared to when we were all scared of nuclear obliteration in the 60s and 70s, and various other things that were going on, AIDS epidemics and stuff like that in the 80s. There were loads of things going on that scared us all to death.
When I was a kid, I didn't even know anything about anything like that. I was just interested in sweets, comics, and television programs and stuff like that.
The thing is, I was aware when I was watching. I mean, Warriors of the Deep. To me, I thought, that's the two. That's the Soviet. I got that, and you go back a bit, Frontier in Space, which obviously Daryl's got a brilliant video on. Please watch it, everybody, later. The Frontier in Space. You go, that's the two. That's the two big blocks. As a kid, because it's the boring news is on, you kind of got a bit of that. So I don't know why in these dark times that RTD tells us about, we can't actually show the kids how to deal with dark and evil.
The only dark times that are around are the ones that are in his head. It's got nothing to do with outside life. The kids want escapism and adventure, and this show, or this reiteration of what Russell T Davies is producing, is nothing like that.
Well, since you've mentioned escapism, we've got a bit of a vox pop. So
I wonder really whether this fantasy genre choice, if you're going to do it, you need to do it very well. But normally you build a world, The Hobbit, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, Harry Potter. The writers are skillful and spend time world building, and there will be an internal logic and rules to that world. He's doing it on the fly, and this is fantasy on the cheap, and fantasy just means a quick god here and a quick god there. I don't think this is proper fantasy, and I think you said it, Hugh, earlier, that if he's going to go fantasy, he should have gone big time, but he therefore Hugh should have spent a few years building the world structure first.
There's no sense to it, nothing.
Yeah, we want the hierarchy, Hugh. I want to know
what is this? What's happening?
Yeah, is the bus, everything's like a feudal system. So is the bus at the very top? As you were saying, Hugh, earlier, have we seen the bus yet? It hasn't been explained. Is the one who waits Sutek? And is the boss higher? Are all these gods lower down? The master's now in the trash can. The master has been so... Isn't it fascinating how the clever, skillful, award-winning RTD has destroyed one of the most iconic villains in Doctor Who to a gold tooth?
And there you have it. But yeah, just to give you a taste, anyone want to feed on any of those morsels or challenge?
Well, I have to put in, we talk about world building. Even in fantasy, you have to craft stories that have internal rules, internal logic. But because of the way that RTD is crafting a single episode in 45 minutes and no world building, I think he's using the moniker fantasy as an excuse for lazy writing. He doesn't have to really do any setups. You don't have to be aware of any rules or restrictions the characters abide by. So when there's a climax, an end point to a story, there's no real payoff. There's no investment. And of course, he thinks he's fighting for a cause. Really, all the stories he's writing are thinly veiled attempts to push his agenda. And he feels the times are dark because it feels to him like perhaps people aren't receptive to what he's pushing. And that's where the darkness comes from. Oh, you don't like what I'm selling you? That's terrible. Here, I'm going to force you to buy some more of it. He's kind of an embarrassment.
One of the questions I've got with Daryl is, Daryl will, I'm mad on the Sea Devils. That Daryl will illustrate the Sea Devils. And he's also done a YouTube video of the Sea Devils. Do watch that one too. And Daryl, you are trying to still fit in with the rules of the world built in the 70s Doctor Who. You're not trying to change it, as you said. And it seems to me with this fantasy genre that the showrunner and the writers are trying to basically change Doctor Who way beyond its rules.
Yeah, from what I saw of the last series, there's not a lot I recognise about Doctor Who in it. I don't like the Ncuti interior much. I think it's sterile. so what have you got? You've got the police box and you've got the theme music, but the theme music is so overblown now that it's not got any of the Delia Derbyshire magic to it. And I don't know, it just doesn't feel like Doctor Who to me anymore at all. And I was thinking, when you talk about world building, you're never going to get characters like Garman or Ronson or Nida in a new series story, because there just isn't the time to care about those characters. You don't. When you're first introduced to Nida, he's a bit nasty, but you don't really understand all the Machiavellian goings on, do you, between Nida and Davros and the plan to destroy the Khalid people in order for the Daleks to rise. You're never going to get that in New Who, because there just isn't the time for that sort of depth.
There's no two-parters.
Yeah, you just get an emblem, a character that's an emblem for something. But you're quite right, because Genesis of the Daleks is one of my defaults. And I have to say, in over those 6 episodes, yes, you've got Raven versus Nida. Remember, there was all the politics even on the same side, wasn't there? Even on the same side, the politician, was it Mogren? And just to see all that going on, Betan, just lovely little roles, and get to know the Mutos. You know, the whole lot. But I agree, in a 45-minute wham bam thank you ma'am, you've got time for like a Joy to the World. You get Anita. I'd like some plumbing done in my hotel. That's it. I mean, she didn't really have a character. She liked playing Ludo, Snakes and Ladders, and she wanted a sink doing. That was it, basically. What a character. Whoa, go girl. You know, it's rubbish. Absolute tripe. Sean, you've been quiet. I feel as though you're ill.
Don't. No, I'm listening, mate. I'm listening. No, Joy to the World. I mean, let's not forget that absolute pantheon of awesome, epic, beautiful writing, where a character, we're watching this program thinking, what's this character called? So the writer thinks, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll have her introduce herself to a fly. And you're like, oh my dear God. Like, it's horrific. Like, these people get paid for this. Like, seriously paid for this.
We should get paid for watching it.
I'd be embarrassed. Yeah, except we're paying to watch it. I'd be embarrassed.
Finish,
I'd be embarrassed. Like,
Sean, the fly bit reminded me of Dracula. When I did Dracula, there was a moment. Is it Dr. Renard? He's talking to the fly in the corner, which is supposed to be a sign that he's gone mad, but actually he's not, because he knows that the fly could be the vampire creatures, because they can transform. And of course, it's just a sign of, in Bedlam, he's been judged unfairly. But when I saw that episode, Joy to the World, and she's talking to a fly, I thought, well, she is a loony. I mean, it's just, what the hell? I'd be complaining to TripAdvisor and the hotel manager, saying this room is a little bit too red. It's a little bit kind of old-fashioned, and your sinks are rubbish. Get a doctor. No, but it's rubbish. But it was next to an LGBTQ nightclub, don't forget.
I think I've stayed in hotels like that in the past.
Oh, God. So, yes, I know. I think the fantasy genre was a neat trick for somebody who wants to be lazy, like Christian said, but I don't know if it's still... Yes, we haven't had season 2 yet. Of course, we're expecting more Pantheon of Gods, and Mrs. Flood will turn into the god of the gods with that. It'll be something like that. And you think, oh, for God's sake, can we just have a world I can believe in, even though it doesn't exist? Can you give it some rules?
But look at the gods, though. Look at the gods. You've got one on screen. That's meant to threaten somebody, is it? That's meant to put the fear of whatever you believe in. That's meant to make you think, okay, right, this is something that could kill me. Really? It's lost any sense of its own seriousness. There's nothing wrong with sliding slightly more towards fantasy if you want. I personally think the argument between 45 minutes, which I was brought up on New Who, versus that slower, it is slow, but it's building it up, those kind of Genesis of the Dalek and all the older stories that are broken down. I think that's more looking at the garnish of the meal. I think for me, the writing is just not good enough, and they don't seem to be taking it seriously. And it's got to such a point now where you're thinking you set your bar so low, and that, an ant couldn't limbo under it. And then it still manages to somehow do a great escape and tunnel down. And you think, oh my God, how much worse can this get? But I think we're about to find out.
I think Russell T Davies has become too self-indulgent, basically.
Yes,
I think
No, don't be ridiculous.
Okay, Daryl.
I was just going to. A few years ago, I watched the entirety of the Twilight Zone, and the original Twilight Zone. And so with that, there are some episodes that are 50 minutes, but most are 25. And so you can write brilliant science fiction in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And actually, I don't personally like the 50-minute episodes. They ramble a little bit too much, and they outstay their welcome a little bit. So you can write great science fiction in a limited time span, but when it's Doctor Who and you're going into history or you're going to another planet, you've got to spend the time, building up what that's all about. So I don't think you can do it with Doctor Who myself. I think 45 minutes, it's worked for maybe for 20 years, depending on your opinion. But, I think maybe it's time to think, see if we can make Doctor Who a bit deeper again.
Yeah, I mean, my argument is, having been in education for 30 years, is we're trying to kind of raise the bar for the kids. Meanwhile, it seems that some media lovies are actually lowering the bar and infantilizing kids. What's the point of me trying to teach the kid a book if they're going to be given space babies? I mean, it's not even in the same universe. But we can't just dwell on one or two things. There's a lot more to discuss about where maybe RTD has got it right, where his intuition has maybe been on the money. And of course, we may continue in where it hasn't. One of the areas I wanted to mention, I have to say, lads, is each season, whether it's 2005 all the way through, they tend to be so disjointed and much more in season one, very immature. That's a mistake. I find that there just seems to be a less of a cohesion because we're going for this kind of much lighter, superficial approach. And because we've mentioned lack of world building, lack of depth, lack of content, it just feels as though it's like they're saying, right, we're going to do, this is the blancmange episode, and it's followed by the pink episode. And then next week is the rainbow episode. It just seems to be as light and frothy as that, but therefore the season doesn't look as though it makes any blooming sense.
I think most of the episodes are the rainbow episodes.
They started it. I mean, they made a stupid decision, didn't they? They got this awesome Doctor in their eyes, actor on board, couldn't, or whatever you want to think, wouldn't wait for him to be available. Thank God, because the ones without him were the best episodes. They wouldn't wait for him to be ready so he could do all the episodes. So then they end up doing episodes where he's not there. They cut them down to 8, of which I think 2 he's not in or barely in. So, we end up with this really strange situation where, did they rush into it? Did they rush into it because they didn't dare wait because the BBC were thinking we could pull the plug? Or, you don't know, because, I mean, we saw how after Flux, or was it before Flux, they virtually cancelled it. Then they made the Flux. So, yeah, strange.
You see,
just a nothing series, really.
It's interesting, Sean, because Flux obviously was 6 very separate episodes with too much in them, very disjointed, as an example. Whereas you've mentioned that Torchwood Children of Earth, that 5 episode over 1 week, which was very cohesive, got good ratings, did build a world, did build a setup, and build up Jeopardy, and it worked. I don't know why, and I'm going to mention Daryl's version of Frontier in Space, for example. That 6 episoder, why that can't be utilized as an idea now that over a series of 8 episodes, if we're only allowed 8 episodes, 4 of the episodes could have their own mini cohesion, followed by another block of 4. So in other words, you've got 2 entirely different stories, but you've got time to build a world. You can have a lot more depth going on and a lot more interesting characterization. And then there's a tiny crossover between episode 4 and episode 5 when you jump to the next story. I don't know why we can't do that. I really don't.
I mean, 4 2-parters would be ideal, plus they'd be saving money. on the sets, etc., etc., rather than just have 8 standalone stories.
Yeah, and I think the audience wants. I think they want some more serious TV. I think they want TV that actually is worthwhile watching, because a lot of us are not watching TV because we don't think it's worth watching.
And you'd have the cliffhangers, but also the fact is you've got to have the good writing as well in order to make sure that those stories are worthwhile.
Now I can see you're nodding your head an awful lot there, Christine. So are you wanting to come in on the episodic, the cliffhangers, and all the rest of it?
Yes. I've shared this with you before. I looked at the 8 episodes from last year and cobbled them together into what would have been 4 2-part episodes if they had been done properly. In fact, I'd be tempted now to go so far as to say, if you're going to grant the audience 8 installments, I'd do a couple of 3-parters and a single 2-parter and reduce it to 3 cohesive stories over 8 separate nights. That would give the chance to do some serious world building. That would create some stakes and bring back some of the darkness that needs to be in the show. I'm sorry, the show is too, what I call, bright, the way it's colored now. You can go beyond the color palette and go beyond the rainbows. It's such a bright show, it kind of denies the actual tone of the spirit of the show from the 1970s, and I want that proper tone to come back.
Well, I mean, I said earlier, I don't want any more Benny Hill speed episodes where basically it's narrative at speed. You really almost could put the Benny Hill music, and it's just kind of, he runs along across a rooftop, he does this, he does a song and dance, and then bang, bang, off you go. I want no more of that. I want to stop seasons being all about the destination rather than the journey. Because Doctor Who, I don't know about you, everybody, I'm going to ask you all, if you had a classic 4 or 6 episode Doctor Who story, a lot of us Doctor Who fans will always have, oh, I love that first episode where it sets the mood, it sets the mystery. And I have to say, sometimes when you look at classic stories, your favorite's episode 1. And less so for me was ever episode 4 or episode 6. I tend to like the build-up, because I was a Doctor Who fan who likes the what the hell's going on. So where I think RTD has got it completely wrong, and I mean completely wrong, is he has done it in reverse. He has, it's all about where we end up to, you know, the big surprise at the end, the big reveal, the big reset. And it's not about getting there. Because there's no reason for me to watch many New Who stories back, because it's just all about what happens at the end. So Utopia is a good example. Just watch the Derek Jacobi reveal at the end. Don't bother with everything in before it. And I think he's got it all wrong. Doctor Who was always about just the suspense and going along the way.
Well, Doctor Who was written for the format, which was, of course, cliffhangers and episodic. Episodes 1 to 4 or 1 to 6. So the writer had to write a cliffhanger for the end of that episode and the next one. But now with this 45 minutes, you just got the one episode, so you don't have cliffhangers.
But you were saying, Daryl, I remember when you wrote some notes today, you were talking about it spoils the rhythm of the stories now if we don't have cliffhangers.
Yeah, because you have to wrap everything up, you're just starting again, aren't you? So there's no... I just don't understand why they were dropped in the first place, because at one time you just said, what makes Doctor Who a classic series? And you said, well, one of the main things amongst, the theme music is a classic thing, the TARDIS is a classic thing, and the cliffhangers are a classic thing. And if you've got cliffhangers, then surely people are compelled to come back. That's the whole point. And so you end an episode on drama, and it's like, I suppose it's what used to happen with, 5 or 6 years ago with Game of Thrones, when it's at its most popular. It would literally have cliffhangers, and then even the season endings would have cliffhangers. Yeah. The whole point was to psych people up for what was coming next. And I think surely you should be really doing that with Doctor Who. That's what it's all about. That's what it's always been about right from the start, has been trying to keep the impetus up and keep the suspense going.
Well, one of the most memorable things to me, as you mentioned the music, is the actual scream at the end of the episode, because you have the cliffhanger and you go into that scream of music into the theme, and we've denied all of that, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you think of New Who isn't completely devoid of them. In fact, they brought some of the best moments. You could argue, I mean, we had them between An Empty Child with the whole where they get cornered. And then
Time of the Angels.
You also have it in that's a good one. And then you also have it in the library one. The whole Donna Noble has left the library, Donna Noble has been saved. So they have used it, but not much.
Not much, not a big deal. Like I say, I think there is I think there's a misunderstanding or a deliberate way of shifting what Doctor Who was. I mean, it's like moving the tectonic plates. Episode 1, episode 2, mystery. You've maybe not even seen the monster. You've seen a hand or an eye, or what, the android invasion. You'd see his eye looking through the people. You'd see the Zygon hand. All that stuff was all about part 1 and part 2. And that's why I never really liked part 4s or 6s, because it had to sort it all out. And you saw the full whack, and it was a rubber humanoid again, or something like that. I liked the mystery. And of course, he's just you'd see a run-in Slovene early doors, because you have to, because it's a 1 episode, and you'll see the Slovene. That's it. So that's one thing I think has been a major mistake. But the other one that everybody will knack us if we don't mention, and that's that the actual Doctor I don't recognize at all. And I actually think he has completely changed way beyond what the Doctor was recognized as. I mean, Jeremy, honestly, am I being fair or too critical?
Very fair. I mean, as I said, I don't recognize the character of the Doctor now anymore, and I don't empathize with the character anymore. This particular interpretation, anyway. I just can't relate to him. So I've stopped watching.
Yeah.
I mean, David Tennant was passable second time round. And I thought, some of that magic's come back, but this new chap that's taken over, I cannot get into it.
So, Christian, if we establish the rules here, because we're Doctor Who fans talking about whether this is a Doctor character or not. So can you concisely sum up what you think the Doctor's character has always been, whoever was the actor?
Well, the Doctor, first and foremost, is alien. That means his perception of the world around him is not going to be precisely what ours is. He's going to have characteristics that are somewhat eccentric. There's not going to be an impetus towards romance, because at 1,000 years old, he has too much lived experience to have a reasonable partnership with a human companion or anyone else who's not a Time Lord of roughly the same number of years. There has to be gravitas with the personality we're seeing on the screen. There is no gravitas with Gatwa. Gatwa is entirely camp, and it shows. They try to force emotion into a story, trying and ramrod some kind of emotional investment by having him cry in each episode. But that is not good characterization, and that's certainly not the Doctor.
Yeah.
Daryl, how far do we have to be careful that the 15th Doctor is just at one end of a spectrum of Doctors, or do you think he has fallen off what actually is the character?
I just don't see the Doctor in the portrayal, really. I suspect it's mostly the writing, but I also think, I don't know, I just think, for me, they never put a foot wrong with the first 4 Doctors. After that, I think mostly it's okay. And what typifies the first 4? I don't really know. They're sort of like, they're like the time traveler from H.G. Wells, or Professor Challenger, or anything from Jules Verne. They're sort of an enigmatic adventurer at heart. And I don't know, in this new portrayal, it's just, yeah, it's too soppy, isn't it, really? It's just, there's no depth, there's no, it's not somebody you'd want to follow, is it? It's not somebody who's aspirational.
No, I mean, one of the issues here, we come to that, is the level of emotion. I know that we can talk about emotional intelligence, and we can talk about it's good for men particularly to be more emotional. There's no problem with that as an issue.
Yeah, but Brendan.
Yeah. Go on.
If you met somebody who cried that much, you'd get them help. I don't say this, I'd say this with all due respect to mental health. If somebody cried that much, you'd get them help, or you'd at least sit them down and say, look, mate, what's going on? Like, because we all know it's important for men to talk. We don't do it enough. We know this. Like, it's important to talk about your feelings. But this isn't a man. This is, well, this is a Time Lord. This is, you've just alluded to it in terms of this isn't somebody you want to follow. The Doctor is meant to be somebody who would walk into a room, command it, and you would look to them and be like, this is somebody who's going to save me. Or if they can't save me, they'll do the damnedest to save me or save everybody else, which is absolutely like, that's what you want. This is lost completely. I mean, yeah.
I know, but is this where we Doctor Who fans of a certain ilk are actually missing something that RTD has spotted? I'm playing devil's advocate here, where basically for 20 years now, RTD and Moffat and Chibnall have had a much more emotional Doctor or story with companion issues and interrelationships. I mean, God, I used to get irritated with the TARDIS crew of the 80s. Tegan saying, we haven't got back to Heathrow used to irritate me no end. That was seen as soap opera in the 80s. But now you think, this is too involved. This is too much. But my argument is, are we the ones who've got it wrong? Because is the television landscape out there wanting more emotional stories, or how to emote, how to deal with emotion? Is that the world we're in now? Emoting, Christian?
No. You have to remember, look at what the show was during its heyday, 26 years, and the number of views that it had on average, and its footprint, its legacy, how long it lasted. That wouldn't have happened if there was not some form of universal appeal that allowed it to reach out and grasp whole generations of devoted fans and even casual viewers. The current iteration of the show has fallen off the radar entirely. And while the approach of, quote, humanizing the Doctor did pay some dividends 20 years ago, those dividends don't appear to have been long lasting, because we're not seeing the level of devotion from the next generation of fans that the previous classic generation was able to enjoy. So I'm going to say we want to go back to that universal appeal that the original incarnation had, which is missing now. And I considered New Who to be modern Who. And then I would say that Disney Who was postmodern. I no longer call it postmodern. I call it postmortem, because it's dead.
You see, in season 2, having been, heavily trailed, and there's been lots of interviews, RTD has given quite a few interviews of late. And in one of his most recent ones, he said that in season 2, you will see a range from Ncuti much more than season 1. And he says you'll see anger, you'll see, and so basically you're thinking, are we actually now starting to reflect what we want?
I think we've seen all we need to see about Ncuti and the series. Well, I certainly have anyway, but
Get your goggles on, people. There's going to be spit flying everywhere.
Well, yeah, I mean, we said he was angry in Dot and Bubble, and spit flying. And why be angry with white supremacists if you're going to give them a planet? I mean, don't waste your breath. Just do it and just do something I think is totally morally wrong. But basically, if he's saying that on paper, I'd go with it. because I do think the Ncuti 15th Doctor needs to be given more range than we've seen so far, I have to say. We can all say Capaldi's Zygon inversion moment. You can all pick, as a Doctor Who fan, key moments for each Doctor. So, for example, I'm going to go down the panel. So, Daryl, a moment, you said it's the first 4 Doctors for you, really. Can you tell us a moment that you would love kind of almost to be kind of replicated now? A key moment for a Doctor when you thought, wow, he's on top of this.
I suppose I'll go for the really obvious one, and that would be the speech in the Ark in Space, because that's what won me over to Tom Baker after being, a big Pertwee fan. I was just a kid when Pertwee, when the third Doctor regenerated, and it took me a while to be won over to Tom Baker, but I just remember that episode of the Ark in Space, and that the rest of season 12, perfection, and I've always thought of it as perfection ever since.
Yeah. So as I come to Jeremy, what I'll say is that Ark in Space moment, which I totally get it. And when he talks about human civilization, what we've done, and you can tell he's alien and he's very admirable. I found it very interesting that I suppose in Rose, there was a moment that I really did like with Eccleston when he actually said, "Can you feel the earth moving?" and all, and there was that kind of alien quality. And that's the moment when I thought Rose, which was an okay episode, suddenly, there's the Doctor. So I can relate to what you're saying about the Ark in Space. Jeremy, your Doctor moment that you'd love somehow echoed now?
Probably Tom Baker's first season and into Tom Baker's second season. And I think the format there was perfect. That particular series with the companions and everything.
So that's 2 Tom Bakers. What about you, Christian?
Well, if we're going to try and tap a range, but do it responsibly, look at Pertwee and his rather stoic but reasonably emotive response to Joe Grant's departure. So here you're trying to show that there is emotional range, but you didn't have to go over the top to do it, did you?
No.
And that would be one of those moments to strive for.
Now, that was 1972, 1973, an era. There's an easy argument, Christian, before I come to Sean, about his example, and maybe from you, which is to say that was a long time ago. Television's changed, society's changed,
Yes.
and we don't actually stay as so reserved anymore. Maybe the Doctor's character has reflected that.
That's certainly a way of marketing to try and deal with that. Well, I'm not sure what Sean would say.
It's really us that should be feeling the emotion, not the character. The character shouldn't be crying. You should be getting the audience to cry or to feel that lump in your throat where you want to cry, which is what David Tennant's 10th Doctor did first time round. But the writing was very good. So you were invested in the show. This new one, no.
Well, we're mentioning Ncuti, but as I bring Sean in and I'll warm him up here, but even on that screen now, the picture from '96 movie when we had a Doctor kiss. So basically, in different showrunners and different producers and in different media executive rooms, they have been talking about making the Doctor much more emotional now for nearly 30 years. Are we the ones who are missing the point? So as I come to you, Sean, what's your go-to Doctor Who moment?
Just before I get to that, just because I'll forget this otherwise, what you've all said is true, that there's a disconnect. So it doesn't make sense if we, as a modern audience, are wanting more emotion to connect with. There'd be people watching this and connecting with it. It's gone backwards. So the more kind of emotional a Doctor becomes, the less we're connecting. I don't find the 15th Doctor easy to connect with, but we'll save stuff for later. So my moment that I'll choose, and you're right, it's from New Who. How did you guess? It's actually from the second episode of the new series. So not this series, New Who. End of the World. There's a moment in that where Eccleston, the Ninth Doctor, is talking to Jabe. a woman of the tree species, and she's got a little machine. Yeah, it's a little bit Crichton's side scan from Red Dwarf, where she's trying to identify a species and she can't, and she's like with the machine, and the doctor's trying to figure out something on the computer, and she puts her arm on the doctor's like forearm, and says, when I heard what it was. When the computer told me what you were, I didn't believe it. I just want to say I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. And the Murray Gold's beautiful music, Christ knows what's happened to it now, plays. The doctor doesn't cry, but his eyes certainly get wet, and he kind of puts his hand on hers and then continues on. Because, it's a perfect moment to show that this is a very different doctor. He's battle scarred, he's weary, he's tired, he's emotionally fragile in a way where he's very quick to anger, which we see later on. I nearly picked a moment from Dalek later on, but I'll save that one. We see this, and Rose helps him through that. Whether you thought it got a bit too soapy, that's fair enough. But it's just a perfect moment to show that you can show emotion, but you don't have to have somebody sobbing. I mean, he cries like 4 or 5 times in one episode. I mean, it loses any impact. Like, whereas when Eccleston cries, when Tennant cries at the end of Doomsday, the single, it's got impact.
Well, I want to bring in, John was going to be with us tonight, and he's sent me loads in. But on the Doctor's character being undermined, we haven't actually discussed the companion arcs and how sometimes we're foregrounding the female companion's story to the point where the Doctor's just a bystander, it seems to me, sometimes in the plot. And the other issue that I wanted to bring to mind is what John wanted me to talk about. So he said, no more Space Jesus. And he actually argues to bring the Time Lords back. And I thought, as a higher authority again, because as you know, there was a hierarchy. The Doctor was messed around with. They called on him, like in Genesis of the Daleks, to dabble because they didn't want to get their hands dirty. There's a few issues here. I get his point that the Doctor's now this big time event, isn't he? I mean, now you can't touch him. He's like this amazing creature. That moment I keep going on about when he stood at Stonehenge and shouted at the whole universe of monsters who all had their trigger button there and could have killed him in seconds. So the argument from John is he would bring back the Time Lords and keep them in the background and remove the Doctor from being this godlike being. The Time Lords will be in the background as a higher authority to reduce the power of the Doctor and make sure lines are no longer crossed. I would go for that if he would do that in season 2, because I'm a bit wary about bringing Gallifrey back at the moment. What are your thoughts on that, everybody?
Good idea.
Yeah. Daryl, you must be shocked as hell at this Space Jesus stuff.
Yeah, but when did that start? Because that started in the... wasn't that part of the Cartmel master plan, wasn't it, really?
That's very true. Yes, you're very right there. That I have to say the dabbling there I didn't really like. I like them going darker and making him a more mysterious Doctor, but by making him a more mysterious Doctor, they had the Hand of Omega. I'm going to commit genocide on Skaro. Like I said, he was like a space womble. He left litter everywhere. There's the Hand of Omega. I'm coming back to deal with this chess game with Fenric. I got a bit tired of that as well.
Yeah, I just prefer the cosmic hobo, really.
Yes.
Somebody who's just traveling around. He's not a god. He's just bored with his life, and he's decided to go on an adventure. I just prefer that.
That's it. I like that. Yes, he's a cosmic hobo and not a space womble, and he's not a space Jesus. Definitely not. Yeah. What do you reckon, Christian, on this one? Because I have to say, as soon as you make him blend into superhero, it's not Doctor Who to me.
No, that you are absolutely correct. I like the idea of the space hobo. I do like John's idea of letting the Time Lords as a hierarchy exist, because by his own actions, he has the freedom to do things that they, in their restricted culture, can't. They're not opposed to using him if it's expedient. They're not opposed to holding him back if it's necessary. And the Doctor understands there are potential limitations. Will I be able to do what I think I need to do right now, or is there going to be a consequence to pay later? So John has a good point, but it has to be well thought out. What you don't want to do is turn the Doctor into a superhero. You don't want to turn it into a space Jesus, a space deity, because there comes a point where he's so removed from reality and from accessibility from the audience that you're going to lose the audience.
Well, the thing is, the inconsistency of New Who is beyond belief. 1 minute he's Space Jesus, and the next minute he's crying over a bogeyman, or the space baby's nappies need changing. It's just beyond belief. Daryl, I'm fascinated though as a Doctor Who fan. There was a period when we didn't have the Time Lords, and I do sometimes wonder whether for every Deadly Assassin story, the Doctor story, the Doctor character's been slightly ruined by all this Time Lord stuff. And of course, as soon as he is called a Time Lord, and as soon as we see the Time Lords in action, suddenly over the years they've made him more and more powerful till in the end, in a way that the Time Lords have spoilt it for him.
Yeah, I was thinking the other day that Time Lord was invented in the War Games, wasn't it? So it wasn't. It's a term that feels like it's been around forever, but actually it was quite late. Really, it's right at the end of the Troughton era. Gallifrey isn't introduced until it's mentioned in the Time Warrior, 1974. So yeah, I think that I think the Time Lords should exist, but I think they're just better off in the background. They're just something that the Doctor's running away from.
Yeah, because I have to say, when we all watched the War Games, I thought they were depicted in a much more different way to you've ever seen since, because they were almost supernatural. They had that power of telepathy or something. They were, remembering that trial sequence, they seemed very, very powerful that you couldn't mess with them at all. And Patrick Troughton's Doctor was so scared when he was getting back to the TARDIS, and then they slowed time and everything. And I feel as though we've dabbled, and there were an English gentleman in the early 70s hovering with an umbrella, and it all went a bit funny. Now, okay, well, I'll bring Sean in, but as I bring Sean in, I'll give everybody another treat just to see again what Doctor Who could look like. Go on, Sean, what were you wanting to say?
So just probably the last point on what we've just talked about there about bringing back the Time Lords. Now, as people know or don't know, if this is the first time with me as a guest, that I'm catching up on Classic Who, because it's better than what we're getting now, slowly but surely. And for me, I love the idea of them bringing the Time Lords back, because you saw in New Who that there was a few times when they were mentioned, like in Father's Day when the Ninth Doctor says, my people would have stopped this like a tear in time. But there's none of them left. And it's also, I think New Who missed a massive trick, particularly around the whole Space Jesus thing, where, the Time Lord Victorious got a bit too big for his boots. The Doctor got a bit too big for his boots. I loved When a Good Man Goes to War, but the Doctor was this massive, could make armies turn and run. But then they had that episode where the Daleks had their memory wiped of who the Doctor was, and also you had the episode where with the blue guy's head in a box where he was like, Doctor Who. So they had the whole thing around that of the Doctor went back to being a nobody in that sense, just a strange man traveling around, but they never capitalized on it. They never probably because of Clara, the 9 million versions we got, I think that was an issue really. They just never did anything with it. You shouldn't have played this, Brendan, because I keep seeing all these bits and I'm like, I want to see what that is. I want to see what that is. That Victorian scene looks great.
I think is that Talons of Wen Cheyenne you're doing there, Daryl?
Yeah.
I mean, what I'll do as we talk, because we've got lots of items on where we think RTD's gone right or wrong and what we'd want from season 2. But what I think is important is if I get this just because there's so many illustrations here, and if we can just advertise again, Daryl, obviously your calendar was sold out, it feels like, in seconds. Are you doing another calendar this year?
There is a plan to do one, yep.
Oh God, you must tell us early. I think we'll all be booking so early. What's your estimate about this Cliffhangers book that you're doing, the illustrations of that?
I would imagine it'd be out in July or August.
Oh, this year. Oh my God! Now let's get this right. Cliffhangers Classic Who. Now I suppose
well, Classic and New Who. It doesn't exclude New Who.
Okay.
Although obviously there aren't as many.
And you're doing a selection. You can't be doing every one because there's too many.
Yeah, I think at the moment it's projected to be about 150, maybe 160.
Whoa! And so basically, the editorial position you've got is you're deciding which ones are the iconic ones, the most classic ones, or the ones that meant a lot to you?
Not to me personally. I mean, I've covered all the ones that I like most, but yeah, I've done some slightly strange ones as well. That maybe the one that will appear at the forward is the Death of the Daleks.
Yeah. The one where he says stop.
The coloured floor. I mean, I put that one in there just for laugh, really. Yeah.
Great cliffhanger that was.
Yeah. Are you going to do
They're running out of time in the studio cliffhanger.
Yeah. Yes. Are you going to do a very short book afterwards, a booklet with all the non-cliffhangers? Yeah. I always think of Snake Dance when the cliffhangers where basically they're resolved within a second of the next episode.
Yeah.
You go, that's a cheat. I think we were talking the other day that a lot of my age group, it was the episode 1 Terror of the Zygons when Sarah turned round.
Yeah. That is one of the best, I think. Yeah.
Have you got that illustrated by any chance?
I did it in the illustrated journey, and I'm going to do it again for this book in a slightly different way.
Yes. And I do have your illustrated journey over there. Yeah. Thank you. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And so what we could do for a few minutes just to indulge ourselves as Doctor Who fans, because as we were seeing clips from this beautiful illustration and animation, there's elements, obviously, Daryl, where I'm thinking, oh God, this is going more Star Wars. And when we're arguing about what should Doctor Who be like, how far do we go into, well, it's 2025. We've got the budget now. We can do this. We can do that. I loved the Frontier in Space level of things where we had Matt Irving busting a gut with all his little fairy liquid bottles and everything, and little. I'm being unfair, but there's an element where you're up in it here, aren't you? And I don't know how far do you think Doctor Who should still be kind of feel low budget, tight?
I think that the thing about the low budget thing is that creativity thrives in a low budget, I think, because people have to use their imaginations more.
Yes.
I remember being invited to an event years ago, and Mike Tucker was there, and we were talking about what's our favorite special effects in films, and we weren't talking about, like, I said, what do you think of the CGI Red Dwarf, and he gave me his opinion on that. And then, like, he pointed out that when things are done on the cheap, sometimes they're better, and the director wants something expensive, but the effects guy will say, you could do this. It was something about shooting a gun, and they wanted the water to sort of they wanted the effect of the bullets hitting the water, but they didn't know how to do it because they can't put the squibs in the water and all that sort of stuff. And a guy came up with the idea of having a tube filled with glass marbles, and he just flicked the tube, but the director didn't like it because it was too cheap. He wanted it done with special effects, but the pen that's floating in 2001 is just stuck on. It's like double-sided tape stuck to a bit of glass, and they just moved the glass in front of the camera. So creativity thrives when you've got limitations, I think. Well, that's what I like about Doctor Who. And when they made Doctor Who in West London, either at the Donut or various places around there, and they had everything on hand, the effects department was nearby, and the effects department was also doing the goodies and stuff like that. that's what I like about Doctor. I like the background stuff of Doctor Who as much as I like the stories of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, I don't think they should make it on the cheap, but I think the ethos should be that you should be as creative as possible and not just rely on the money fixing everything. Like I was saying at the start, you know, you can't fix everything in the edit.
Well, for
But
example,
I think they might be trying to do that.
Well, for example, Daryl, this illustration here where I've stopped it, is this your updated version from Genesis?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, and that's an image that close to that. That's the AI version, but that's basically what I gave to AI before it moved it. So that's a cliffhangers image.
So as this is an example of adversity and low budget, because obviously Genesis, I think, am I right, Jeremy? That episode ending wasn't really going to be in it, and they came up with suddenly that mutant idea, and he had a bit of rubber, and he looked as though he was getting strangled, and it's a brilliant cliffhanger actually, but it was probably done on the cheap.
Oh yeah, I mean the BBC couldn't have achieved that in the real time, but obviously they just had to do something like that. He's just tearing it off his neck.
But it brings to mind everybody on the panel here, including Sean here. When we're talking about what RTD should do in season 2, I don't think you can show strangulation. I'm guessing. I suppose you can't show Mr. Sin with a knife. I assume you can't see various things. He doesn't even want the sonic screwdriver looking like a gun. Don't go there. I mean, you know.
But you can show a wheelchair with guns on it. And
yeah,
rockets.
Well, exactly. For every progressive move, we go backwards. But no, I thought that was intriguing because obviously Mary Whitehouse had a panic attack about the Deadly Assassin, for example, didn't she? I mean, this could be done. I mean, they've got the budget to do stuff like this. I mean, they've attempted it with Crucible. Of course. I mean,
I love that shot. I love that shot.
Yes.
Sorry, Brendan. I have to say that is beautiful.
Talons. Have you seen Talons of Wenchai?
It's just atmospheric.
Yeah. Well, this is.
I'm reviewing it. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm reviewing it with. I think me and the rabbi from another planet are going to do it.
It is so atmospheric. Forget, you know, some people say various things, but oh my God, that is 6 episodes. It's a cleverly written story, Robert Holmes, and it's got a 4-parter, then a 2-parter that works. The theatre background works. We all know about Jago and Lightfoot, you know, that there's some fantastic characterization, which, as Daryl made a point about Genesis, they wouldn't have existed in New Who because there wouldn't have been time for them. And this is the shame of it. I mean, Talons of Wenchai is a classic because it was given time to breathe.
Also, the fact that the BBC were very good at doing costume dramas at that particular time as well.
Yes, the Duchess of Duke Street we had, for example. I mean,
they've lost a lot of things, haven't they, the BBC?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean,
they've lost a lot of things, the BBC. They've lost the talent, for one, arguably. But I think, you know, they were all pulling in the same direction, like you said, with all the effect houses. I love Red Dwarf. It's my favourite comedy ever, and I've watched all the behind the scenes. So all that kind of stuff you look at. And, you know, it really breeds creativity to have to do that. I mean, some of the best shows ever in British television look arguably really, really cheap. Steptoe's Son, one set. You know, you see the microphone every now and again. Faulty Towers, the hotel walls are wobbling all over the shop. You see the boom in pretty much every other episode. You know, but it's the writing. And I think, you know, the argument about how far does it go to science fiction and to Star Trek. I think if the worlds feel lived in and believable and there's stakes in them, people will come along on that journey with you. I think that's the problem of now, is that it's too light, it's too frothy. They're telling you it's coffee, but it tastes suspiciously like something else. And, you know, you're just like, I don't know what this is. It's lost any grit. And it's like, well, what do I waste half an hour watching this for? You know, is this going to make me feel better about my bills going up, about the fact I've had a week at work? No, I'd rather watch something else. And that's why people aren't watching.
One thing I want to say, while I've still got the video being used as well from Daryl, using his illustrations, which a lot of us really do recognize. The Mondasian Cybermen stand out a mile and have done to everybody who's ever seen them. Your version, Daryl. Now, there's been an argument on my channel for quite a while. For example, we did a survey about whether you reboot, rest, cancel, or just continue the show, right? And of course, those stats are changing over time. Now, the point I've started to warm to, Daryl, is that maybe this is it. We've just run out of road, and maybe given a few years with a new production team and hopefully new kind of values of how to make a program, you could actually just do Doctor Who stories that have already been written again with different, higher production values, and maybe go darker. Like, so 10th Planet could be remade with a different Doctor. Don't give him a number. Don't disrespect William Hartnell. It's just do the story again. Mm-hmm. I don't know. What are your thoughts when you've illustrated these things? You must be going through a lot in your head going, if only Doctor Who could maybe remake some of these. Would that be a possibility? Would you like that? Or do you think that's sacrilege?
I don't know. I think I'm slowly changing my mind on it. Because I think, like you were saying earlier, if you did a 3-part story and then a 2-part story, you could almost, because I've obviously spent a lot of time over the last month or so doing the Frontier in Space one. I've been thinking about that a lot. And you've got a lot of world, but you've got the Draconians, you've got the Ogrons.
Yeah.
Then you bring the Master in, you've got the Daleks in there. So it ticks a lot of boxes, a lot of the good boxes.
Yeah.
You don't want to tick, they do a lot of tick boxing these days, but, in terms of Doctor Who, it's got a lot of stuff that you could do, and you could really go to town on the tensions that are potentially leading to war, like small skirmishes and stuff. And in terms of, I put some new spaceships in that which aren't in the episodes, and I'm thinking, well, you could have merchandise. Kids would buy spaceships. Kids would buy action figures of Draconians and Ogrons, and then the older collectors would buy really expensive, what do they call them? They don't call them dolls, do they? I don't know what they call them.
Action figures.
The action figures, yeah. So, I mean, there's a lot of merchandising. I mean, I don't particularly like, Doctor Who being a franchise. It's all about merchandise. But then again, it's probably one of the few things the BBC's really got that they can really make a lot of money on. But they just seem to make all the wrong decisions about making money out of it.
Yeah. Now, one thing... Earlier in our show tonight, we were talking about whether we should go darker with Doctor Who and put it on later. Now, here's a picture, an illustration of the Deadly Assassin. And I thought the Deadly Assassin original was pretty macabre and body horror, but you've gone even darker, Daryl. Right, if I went along the panel, I'll start with Sean because he's been listening quietly there. So, Sean, I mean, Deadly Assassin, when you see that version of the Master, do you think Doctor Who should be going there nowadays with this sort of depiction, or is it just too dark?
No, why not? I mean, you've mentioned shows that people watch. Adolescence, I watched that yesterday. That's not, that it's got people talking. Doctor Who's not getting anybody talking. I know they're very different things they try to talk about, but why not? Why not have this? Because I think it gets lost that, like, we want the younger people to watch it. Well, who do you think has the remote or Fire Stick or whatever it is you use to control your television now? Who do you think's choosing it? Because I didn't take the remote off my dad and go, right, Doctor Who's on. My dad put it on. Or, recorded it. It's I think it definitely could go this dark. I'd love to see it go this dark, but the problem is you need a Doctor who can match it. And this guy can't. I'm sorry, he's been miscast. He can't do it.
Mm.
But
at least I don't think he can.
But bringing in Jeremy, I don't think RTD wants to go dark with his scripts. He always likes that lightness. And I don't think anything like this would be on TV for even a minute in his. I mean, I think of The Giggle, and you had that moment. One of the characters was turned into a wooden puppet, and I thought, brilliant. And then he got reset at the end. And I thought, no, in those days, the Gallifreyan Guard would be killed or shrunk. That's it.
Yeah.
I mean, you're aware of our society and where we are now. Do you think, to be fair, can RTD go this dark now with Doctor Who?
Yes, he could do, and any other producer could do the same. But whether the standards at the BBC now have changed of what you can do and what you can't do at a certain time, I don't know. But if the option is to do it, put it on as a later show, at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the evening, then to make it darker, then so be it. But as I said, years and years ago, Doctor Who was pretty dark in the 1970s, 71. You know, for children, when I look back at it now, actually, when I think about some of the content in it, it was pretty near.
Yeah.
And almost on a comparable situation with Hammer House of Horror films. You know, the plastic chair and the doll, you know, in Terror of the Autons. I mean, that was pretty horrific.
Yeah. Grimm's fairy stories. This makes me laugh. Plus, parents aren't looking at what kids are looking at on the internet. I mean, there's certain very adult things they're looking at the internet, which I think are a little bit more scary than just doing a bit of body horror there. Christian, we've got to be fair on this argument. Do you think you can go this dark now with Doctor Who, or are we just wanting our wishes to be fulfilled?
I think you could go this dark, but you have to understand that the studio heads, the suits, the broadcasting number crunchers may be reticent to take that kind of a chance. And the irony is, this is the same cadre of people, if you went back 50 years, who would have greenlit it. And they felt confident. So something has happened in the universal zeitgeist today that is compelling the number crunchers at the BBC and broadcasting in America to be less open to the darker version of these things. I mean, look at the 1980s slasher films, which I hated, but the teenagers just went to the cinema in droves watching them. And clearly they were very dark, cheap to produce, very dark, and the audiences ate them up. And I would theorize if we could go that dark again with Doctor Who, you would find a receptive audience.
Well, here's my next question with what I've frozen on screen from one of your illustrations again. Would you, in 2025, if you were the showrunner and you were RTD with the budget, would you do this? Would you go high stakes? You can do, ships blowing up. Think of what you could do with the Sea Devils now. And you could get the submarines back in. Would you go for that kind of almost action adventure mini movie version of Doctor Who? Anybody?
You could do, but really it's often better Doctor Who as a series with a number of episodes rather than just a one-off or a standalone.
I'm going to leave the Sea Devils there for a second because it is my favourite of all time, and I love the upgrade you've done on them because they just look even more sinister. I just love the way their frill neck comes out a little bit more. They look really badass. They really do. And I was scared enough in the 70s to not go in the sea because of this blooming episode, and you've just done it. I think this would work with the kids now.
Yeah.
But it has to be the string vest. Isn't it funny? It has to be the string. It can't be all this crap now, the samurai thing and all the rest of it. No, go back to that. They got it right. Adversity bred a very clever look. Have you seen the Sea Devils, Sean? Are you aware of how amazing the Sea Devils are as a story?
No, not
and
yet.
How... Yeah, because it's good old John Pertwee being James Bond again. You had the Royal Navy, you did have a submarine, you had the diving bell, there was loads going on, lots of action. It's great. Now, all I'm saying is, RTD, you've got a budget. He's also got a 5-part spin-off with the Sea Devils in it. Would you like an upgraded version of what you've just seen on screen by Daryl? Okay, that's a definite from everybody. Right, okay. But is that Horror Fan Rock? It is, isn't it? And
yes.
And then you feel as, oh gosh, Doctor Who's got money. and there's the giant rat that won't look like the giant rat that Sean's going to see. And then, but I mean, dark. It's the dark, and good old sense sphere, and then we've got the frontier in space, and then we've got the good old Daleks. I mean, I applaud you, Daryl. I know it's a labour of love, but I have to say, I've never met a fan yet who doesn't like your work. It's phenomenal.
Every time I see Daryl's work, I feel invested in the show. I can't speak highly enough of it because it brings that sense of investment back to Doctor.
It feels like, Daryl, you've made that world come alive for me in 2025. Do you know what I mean? You've done what's needed to kind of upgrade it, but you've got that. I think you've got that awareness of just. It's got to be sinister. They've got to be scary. They cannot be taken too lightly. We can't have a sea devil that does a fart. You know, we've got to have it done properly.
It's brought the magic back.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing that. And please, I would recommend everybody, you've heard in about July, look out for that Cliffhangers book. Is your other book still out, I'm sure, and maybe a calendar. But the other thing is YouTube channel. What have you got up on your YouTube channel? I saw the Sea Devils. I saw Frontier in Space. I've
done 5, I think. So the first one I did was just various bits. I can't even remember what I did now, but the Sea Devils was in that one, and I'll have to go back and look. I can't remember what I did. I did a little bit of Invasion of the Dinosaurs, and I did a Sontaran tackling a Ruton.
That one with the 2 Rutans. Wow.
Yeah.
I have to say that, I mean, there's certain, I don't know, there's certain illustrations that just speak to me as a Doctor Who fan, having read all the Target books and everything. You see a little Sontaran spaceship grounded, don't you? Yeah. And you've got 2 Rutans flying through the air. Oh, that's a shot.
Yeah, I like that. That worked quite well, that one. And then I did Genesis Daleks, and then I did Sea Devils, and I did Towns of Wenchiang, then I did the Sea Devils, and then I ended up doing Frontier in Space, which I enjoyed. I thought it might be a bit of a slog because I thought everybody calls that story the one where they're just in and out of prison all the time. But no, actually, I really enjoyed that one. So, then I don't know what I'm doing next at the moment, but I put a teaser for Horror of Fang Rock up, so that might be there. But then I also did the Menoptera, which you've just shown in that. So I might do that.
It's stunning when you see what is possible, and I have to say, you are you know that RTD since 2005 they have those meetings with the illustrators and everybody about what the look of the series, where they'll go with each monster or villain, and they spend a lot more time on it than probably they did in the past. And you just think, can Daryl be in the room? Can we please have somebody who's got that kind of understanding of what Doctor Who needs to be and just get him in there? Because I do think it's important, because we've had too much messing on. Mind you, I say that. And even if you got Daryl on board, he can't save a Sontaran from eating a chocolate bar, can he? Can't do it. Can't do it.
It might be very frustrating to be in a room with current.
Yes. I would think so. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd love to be in that room. I'm very contrarian in a meeting, I tell you. Yeah, I don't know why. Thing with that question though is the fact that that the problem is you've kind of half answered your own question in that they think they know what Doctor Who needs to be. They think they actually think they're making something good. And that's very, very difficult to go against, because if there's not a single part of them that thinks we're not doing this completely right, a little chink in your armor, you can get in there and start to maybe change some opinions. But I genuinely think they think they're making an awesome, awesome, awesome show for an audience that loves it, even though that audience doesn't exist, apart from about 6 people on Twitter.
I wonder if they really think they believe that they're making something good, or whether they just think they're making something worthy. And I think that sometimes is what's going on with the media lovelies nowadays. It's all about it's worthy. Whether it's entertaining, it's just got the message is there. Now, we mentioned the
It's not worthy of
bi-generation.
our bloody time, I tell you that.
But the thing that I know a lot of you mentioned when you wrote to me, so I'm going to get to it now because it is quite important regarding, there's a fair few things here. Here we go. There we go. And this is what you started with, Sean. John did as well. And a few of you also said, stop antagonizing the viewers. I showed Davros earlier. I just showed you bi-generation then, changing the Doctor, and sometimes the message being all there is to the story. Sean, why did you mention this? I was perplexed.
So sorry, I'm having problems turning my mic on and off for some reason. I mentioned this because I read an interview that the new companion gave. Is it Varada Sethu? I think that's the lady's name. Nothing against her, not seen her in much. Thought she was okay in the Boom episode. But it's just very antagonistic. We've had this for 8 years now. Like, it's getting very, very old. Being told, it's like nobody cares who is in the TARDIS. The demographic makeup of the people in the TARDIS is not relevant to the people watching it. We just have to. We're human beings. We can empathize with each other. We can touch grass. We can empathize with each other. We can connect with each other. Because if we couldn't connect with each other, we would never connect with anything ever again. Because it would never be exactly what we know. So, and in this, I'm going around the city rather than the houses. So, in that interview, she said that Ncuti had said to her on set of the TARDIS, "Oh, this is going to be brilliant. We're going to pee off so many people." And you think, why are you even thinking in those negative terms? Like, I don't make my podcast. Brendan doesn't make his show. The rest of us aren't here to go, "Oh, I can't wait to make this sensory episode. 6 people out there are going to hate it." No, we're making it for the other 3,000 or however many people who will listen to it, who might enjoy it, might get something from it, and because we enjoy doing it. Like, why would you start off from such a negative point of view? And that's coming from a northerner. We love a bit of negativity and a bit of whinging. We love it. But what are you doing? Why is that? And why would you go out and say that? Brendan, I don't know what everybody else does. You know what I do, Brendan. I know what you used to do. You used to be a teacher. If we went out in our professions to a big meeting or a conference somewhere or to an action day with loads of other agencies and stood there and were antagonistic, overly political, you'd be getting pulled in by your boss the next day to say, "What the hell were you doing there?" There's footage of you talking about this. And they're just not learning. Keep your mouth shut. Make a good show. Come out and tell us how good it is, whether you believe it is or not. Not to go all Roy Keane, but do your job, make your show, shut your mouth, take your money, tell us it's really, really good, and let us, let people make their own minds up on whether or not they enjoy it. Don't just assume, oh, this is going to annoy people. Anybody actually bothered by the demographic of the TARDIS, as it stands now, aren't going to watch it anyway. So what are you on about? Literally, what planet are you on? Is what you want to say to somebody who makes such a strange comment. But it's not the first time, is it? Look at Jodie Whittaker with the first thing she said about the audience. What are you doing? I don't know why the people in the BBC, the managers who count the money, aren't going, "Look, we are struggling for money here. Can you tell these idiots to just keep it shut, keep it stum?" Sorry, go on, Brendan.
Sean,
sorry.
Can I just say to you?
Can
I just say to you? Can you keep it stum now? No. Sorry.
Yeah, going on to what you were saying, it's really the Snow White syndrome all over again, isn't it? I mean, you have the leading actor, dissing the fans, etc.
Yeah.
And it goes against the film or the production that they're actually in, so it doesn't help the ratings.
No, it doesn't help. Christian?
I was about to say, when they make comments like that, it's almost a petulance on their part. They know that what's come out previously has not been well received. And so because it wasn't well received, they're ready to thumb their noses at the audience even more. just to spite them. So it's almost a sense that we're ready to go ahead and spite the audience. That's not the kind of relationship the actors, the creatives need to have with the audience that they're trying to please. They're going to lose them. And as Sean has pointed out, anyone who would be so offended would definitely not be watching in the first place. So what point are they trying to make?
I'm trying to work out why. You're quite right. It's been going on for too long now. I did a Bigenerates the other day. The white male gaze was mentioned by Jodie. You've had the touching grass. You've had the I'm not going away. We've even had RTD then saying, well, the Doctor wasn't the straightest of men anyway. And you're thinking, you really are just pushing and pushing and pushing. But on top of that, it's not even that. The Davros is an example where basically we're not doing this anymore. You lot can complain. So there's messaging that we have to just listen to. On top of that, there's insults and antagonism from you don't understand Doctor Who anymore because we're making it like this. I know you're calling it out, but I'm sorry. And then on top of that, there's the Davros retcon, which I don't know anybody who actually in their right mind wants it to become just a normal humanoid, because then it's just neither again. It's useless. So I just find that there is a sense now that we tell you what to think. I do think we've had this kind of change in the power relationship in everything. It's not just the media. This is what we want you to think. If you question us, you are the wrong sort. You see that in everything. And that's what I'm finding a problem, because the fans who are going mad about this, that, and the other are going mad because they've invested in the program and they're going, but that never happened before. You've changed canon, you've changed law, you've changed the character. And they're going, no. And they kind of tell you off. That's what I'm finding a problem.
It's always been like this. How many times do we hear that? It's always been this way. You're just too thick to see it. They don't say the second bit, but they imply it.
But this is all very H.G. Wells, sorry, not H.G. Wells. It's very George Orwell. Just, we're telling you what to think. I mean, Daryl, we're all sci-fi fans, and it's going very sci-fi regarding you either are with us or you're against us. And if you're against us, we don't want your voice.
Yeah, I would have thought we're in a very ripe time to be writing parody science fiction, but nobody's touching it, are they? They're not touching the real issues, are they? They're just they're avoiding it like the plague. It's interesting. I think when we were talking right at the start about mistakes, I think one of the big mistakes is Unleashed, because every time RTD has said something, I find myself totally fundamentally opposed to what he's going on about. I think that was a big mistake. The Davros thing was the start, but he's talked about a lot of things, and I thought, no, I just don't understand why this guy's doing Doctor Who.
That's the main problem when Russell T Davies speaks. It's just there's no one to control him.
Yeah,
what he says.
Yes, it's a bit like when you see Davros doing one of his speeches later on in a story, and he starts to have a rant, and he starts to lose control, and he starts to freak out. A bit like in Remembrance of the Daleks.
I think the other problem, just to go back to what Sean was saying, is that I think the media stoke these celebrities to say those things for a headline. So social media is a problem. It's great. Social media is great for connections, but they want the clickbait headlines, don't they? And they actually didn't they clip that bit and sort of highlight it in the article, where she's swearing, and it's like, they've done it because it'll get them headlines, and it'll get them, they'll be the top of the listings for what's trending at the moment on one day. And they do the same thing with probably the Davros thing was the same thing. Let's get a headline out of that for a day. But it just upset people, didn't it? It just annoyed people.
But this wouldn't have happened 40, 50 years ago. It wouldn't have been allowed.
No. No, I mean, I always remember there was a, I think on Nationwide, I think it was the 20th anniversary, and on Nationwide they had Troughton on, Pertwee on, Davison on, and they were talking to Sue Lawley and a few other people, Verity Lambert on a bit earlier, and they were talking about they only allow the Daleks out as a prop on special occasions if the context is right, because they don't want to undermine the Dalek and the show. And you're thinking, gosh, we've jumped from that. Now it's just kind of I mean, the latest season 2 trailers are showing you behind the scenes before you've seen the story, which I think almost breaks the fourth wall again, because what's happening is I haven't invested in this series yet about getting Belinda home. And I'm already seeing that she gets on well with Ncuti and they're a good laugh. And then you see green screen shots and all the rest of it. And I think there's in desperation showing us too much. And a bit like in Wizard of Oz, you're pulling back the curtain and you're just revealing everything. I think as a kid, I'd have been bored with this and not interested. I don't want to see all the thinking and the making and everything necessarily as a kid. Not before you've seen the program.
Yeah, even in the DVD era, you have to wait for the DVD to see the special features, wouldn't you? So you'd have to wait a few months before you saw how these things were done usually.
It's all right showing behind the scenes after the episode has been screened. I don't mind that.
But don't kill the illusion.
Yeah, they used to
Sean?
Yeah, they used to show. Sorry, going back to what Jeremy was saying, they used to show. I know it's unleashed now, but they used to show Doctor Who Confidential, I think, straight away after the episode had ended on BBC Three. Yeah. So it was like a really clever way of doing it. And and going back to like the media type thing. I mean, I try not to get political about things in my podcast, but I'll flirt with the line a little bit here. I think if the media are going to be that way and they want the actors or the actresses to say something that they can get hold of, then these actresses and actors have to be a bit more savvy. And they've got all these people behind them. They've got agents, they've got social media consultants, they've got all these advisors. They're like politicians. So they should have people around them to say, that's it, no further questions, or we're not going to get into that, or I'm here, I'm an actress, I'm a singing clown, I'm whatever I am. I'm just here to do this and that. We never hear anymore. Go back through any of these interviews with like Ncuti and all these and all these different stars, RTD. Have they ever, at a single point, ever said anything like, "This is going to blow your socks off"?
Well,
like, have they ever said it? Have they said it? Because all we hear is like, "Oh, Mrs. Flood."
But I don't care about Mrs. Flood. Big thing is when you're interviewing actors, and I know actors, their story is a bit tedious, but the big issue is, I'd love to hear Ncuti and Verada saying Doctor Who and the making of it challenged my acting skills. I'd love to hear that sort of thing, because it's a hard show for, I think, a lot of actors to do, because you really have to go out there. Now, if they're in their comfort zone, I worry. And they tend to sound as though they're in their comfort zone because they suddenly want to waffle on about victimhood or waffle on about something to do with their context when they were 6, rather than saying, but as an actor, this job pushed me to the limit. And there's a scene you'll see in episode 7 where we never hear that. We just hear all the dross and the froth. And that's what concerns me, because actually there's no content.
And Gatworth said, it's a lot of hard work. It's been 6 months of hard work or something. I thought, well, wait a minute, you weren't in one of the episodes, and then you're not in 2 of the episodes for the second time round.
Yeah.
So,
Hartwell did it for like
does he think that's relatable? Does he?
Can I just to move things?
Sorry, did he think that's relatable?
On the platforming thing and on the lecturing and all the rest of it? One thing I just wanted to get your comments on, if you have thought about this, is, it feels to me as though RTD, in how he depicts New Who, we have a problem with males, because we've diminished the Doctor, I would say. Forget whether we've done the Jodie thing on Chibnall, but it's always the companion arc. And it's always, I mean, even season 2 is going to be get her home. I know there'll be obstacles in the way. Why can't it just be, as you said, at the very beginning, Daryl, escape his adventure, you know, no tearjerker at the end, really, and let's get back to that. But instead, we've gone down this road where the males, to me, it looks as though they're either always the baddies or they're in the background. Has anyone got any observations on that?
Well, that's just television now, isn't it? Generally. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say it's very commonplace. A part of me wonders if the attempt to create a female companion who's the answer to everything is part of their attempt to ingratiate themselves with their desired audience. That is, we know that the companion is supposed to be the human being that the audience identifies with and asks the doctor the right question. Well, since they're already seeing the doctor through the eyes of the companion, why don't we go ahead and make the companion uber special? That means by proxy, the audience is super special and is the answer to everything. And so it's kind of a subtle way of ingratiating themselves with their target audience. The problem is every time they go down that road, they actually marginalize the doctor himself, who's supposed to be the focus of the series.
Mind you, Christian, do remember Star Beast. The female presenting Time Lord is more important than the male presenting Time Lord. I mean, the dialogue written by the great RTD himself was basically saying women are better than men. It was like,
yep.
What are you doing?
That's right.
And you go back to, say, John Pertwee in The Green Death or Planet of the Daleks, and you're going, you had a really interesting companion in Joe Grant. Joe Grant got space to be a great companion, but he was clearly the doctor and he was clearly in charge and he was clearly not diminished. Why can't the writing give a companion the space to do their perils and all the rest of it, but you still don't wreck the doctor?
Absolutely.
Well, they do a lot of that these days.
Can,
don't they?
they
diminish one character to try and uplift another one, but it doesn't work, does it? You can balance it better than that. You don't have to diminish a character to make another one look better.
It's a lack of talent.
I mean, this series is all about Doctor Who.
Do you think it's a lack of talent?
Doctor Who is the main character, and that's what it's all about.
It should be, but as you're saying, Sean, I wouldn't. I know what you're saying. A lack of talent. It's a lack of time. It's a lack of being bothered. I mean, in the writer's tale, RTD does show that he used to do many, many drafts. I don't think we're in that situation as much now. It doesn't feel like it. And actually, even Chris Chibnall gave the game away because he said one of the resolutions, it was the first draft. I mean, I think the way the world seems to be now, there's less drafts going on. One of the other things that was thrown at me, I can't remember who said this, was to pause all the classic callbacks.
Yeah.
I can't remember if that was John or somebody else, but basically, we need the Doctor Who series in 2025 onwards, if it's going to survive, to actually stop being suffocated by canon, to be suffocated by its own past, and to be suffocated by temptation into fan fiction. It needs to establish itself. It needs to prove itself in the 2025 television landscape as a program in its own right, and not saying, actually, let's get the Daleks on. Let's get the Master back. I've got all those temptations. Everybody's reckoning season 2 is going to have the Daleks back, that the Master, Missy, or the Rani will be back. Well, we had Sutek, and look what happened there. What do you reckon on? There should be a rule for a little while, and Chibnall, bless him, did try that for the first season, didn't he? He said, "We'll move forward. We won't call back and pull back Sutek and Daleks and Masters and everything." What do you reckon, Jeremy?
Well, looking at the way that Chris Chibnall's series panned out, if it had been Russell T Davies, I would have thought I need a hook, or many hooks, to get the audience in. So I would have brought back all the old favourites just to see what the viewership would have been like. But the problem for Russell T Davies is that I just don't think he can write any good Doctor Who stories now anymore. I don't think he can do it.
You see, that's why I came to that conclusion, Daryl, that I think he's more bothered about the actual end of the arc than he is getting there. And so the reveal is Sutek. in Legend of Ruby Sunday, but actually getting there is like, who cares? I mean, but would you like Daryl Doctor Who to move forward on its own, on its own imagination?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, probably the role model is 1970 onwards, because it didn't really do that many callbacks, and I mean, it was quite a few years before they did the Daleks again, wasn't it? I mean, the Daleks have sort of been put aside since Evil of the Daleks. Yeah. So they hadn't been on television for a long time, but they brought them back on the front of the Radio Times, didn't they, with a nice bit of artwork.
Yeah.
But the Daleks weren't going to be featured in that story because they were going to have a different type of alien race, and then they brought the Daleks back as a hook, which was very clever.
But looking at season 7 and 8, there's not any callbacks in there, is there? I don't think.
Very true. I mean, this is what's interesting. I think because we've all just been got the Blu-ray of season 7. Season 7 is actually interesting in so many ways for somebody like RTD, who's all in denial. 7 episode stories, world building, endings of, say, the Silurians, where basically it's more nuanced. Do you side with the Brigadier unit? Do you side with the Doctor and the Silurians? Nuanced writing, 7 episode stories. As you say, no real callbacks. It's trying to establish itself in a different position.
True, but they were going to bring back the Cybermen and the Yeti in season 7, but they changed their mind.
Well, maybe hallelujah. Because
and I suppose they did bring back the Autons the next year, so they're sort of doing their own callbacks. But really, all the way through until Revenge of the Cybermen, there's not really that many callbacks. I mean, the Sontarans become new, and they come back in Tom Baker's first season. But other than that, it's not a lot, is there? Really? I don't.
No, I think
it's all new monsters in 73, isn't it?
I do feel as though it seems to have speeded up nowadays, doesn't it? It feels just like bam, 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 bam. And I do remember the 70s. I mean, we're all from different periods, aren't we? But I do remember the 70s. And yes, 75 to 79, I had 4 years to wait for the Daleks. You had a long time to wait. Revenge of the Cybermen was my first live moment to see the Cybermen in action. And then didn't we have to wait 7 years again to see them in Earthshock? So, we weren't seeing these things all the time, but I think it has maybe got a bit lazier. Now, I'm also aware that when I say that maybe as a criticism, that if you go back to 63, 64, Verity Lambert was no fool. And once the Daleks had landed and Dalek Mania, let's have the Daleks master plan. Let's do the chase. Let's do this. I'm aware that the callbacks in a way started very early doors because that helped sustain the program in a way. But I think now it's just turning more into almost fan fiction.
I mean, Chris Chibnall's first season had no repeated monsters, but it was dire. It was really dire. Most all the stories.
I hated that series. Yeah. It was awful.
I think part of the reason Chibnall shifted gears in his second year was because the first year was so poorly written, and there was a desperation to try and create a hook that would bring the audience back. Okay, at that point, trying something new has failed. Let's go back to the standards that worked. But here's the thing. We don't want a retread of what we've seen before. For a long time, it was possible for Doctor Who to add compelling worlds and compelling antagonists to the overarching universe that we enjoyed. Why can't we go back to that and add more originals, but write them well and make them compelling? So that 10 years from now, people are talking about this incredible new antagonist who was introduced to audiences for the first time in 2026. Right now, I don't have high hopes that we're going to get that.
There's a possibility, Christian, that the discussion of episode 3, season 2, The Well, there's talk that well might be I don't know what they were called in Midnight, the creature that steals your voice. Because there's been hints that Wild Blue Yonder, which was to me a pretty vacuous episode, and I still don't know why he wrote it as a special, But knowing RTD, there's a reason. Number one is he needed the salt on the floor to do all this fantasy nonsense. But he's opened something up. And I think we're going to get Midnight. I think we're going to get a call back to Midnight. And we're going to get a bit more of that creature that he invented in a very good story. I'll give him that. I did enjoy Midnight. Now, in our final moments of our show and discussion, everybody, let me bring it back to something, everyone, if you haven't mentioned so far, something that you wanted to, which is whether if you were writing and making season 2, I mean, honestly, it's not made yet. You have a chance to revive it properly because you didn't like certain things in season 1. What have we not mentioned that you think should be there in the template? I mean, Jeremy, what are we missing that needs to be in season 2 to get it back on in the nation's consciousness?
Extremely good writing of the quality of the quality of 2005, 2006, 2007. Let's see it. Let's see something on the table.
So, yeah, bottom line is the writing needs to change. So you really don't want no more Buggins' turn, no more Moffat coming back, no more Chibnall coming back, no more Mark Gatiss. We need to reach out to new blood.
I think completely a blank sheet, start all over again, get a new production team, a new company, a new producer, the lot.
Okay. Christine, your thoughts?
I tend to agree with Jeremy on this. I mean, if I were to constrain myself with what we've seen in Disney season 1, I'd say you need to resolve the bi-generation by having the doctors refused and then create a new doctor to go forward and try and undo some of the damage that we've seen. And of course, there are narrative ways to do that. But I would certainly be angling for undoing the damage we've seen, starting fresh with a good creative team, and going forward from that point on.
There is talk that the bi-generation wasn't as much as a kind of a sop that it sounds, that actually in season 2, you're going to see either the Rani or Missy, who picked up the Master's gold tooth. There's an awful lot of talk that actually the Master has bi-generated as well. There's talk that RTD's done more than you think regarding these ideas that look as though he's just made up. Daryl, your thoughts? Because I know we've discussed a lot tonight on where Doctor Who is, where he's gone right or wrong. But if you were in charge, are there things that we haven't mentioned yet that you think we really should have in season 2?
I wouldn't really like to say how I feel about it. And I'm not even sure I'm going to watch. I probably won't watch it. I'll probably watch the reviews of it.
Have you seen any of the trailers yet?
I've seen a few of them. I don't know how many there are. I think I've seen 2 of them.
Are they not piquing your interest?
I mean, it looks more expensive than season 1, but that doesn't, to me, say doesn't mean it's going to be better. It just means it's going to be flashier. And I just, I say they may have taken so long to finish series 2 because they've thought, well, let's really up the visual scale of the thing. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. So I'd like to see if they have sort of done that, or whether they've actually improved the writing. But again, the way they've chosen the writers doesn't seem to be for the right reasons, does it? So
no, they don't seem to understand the Doctor as we understand the Doctor from Classic Who. I mean, he's not a refugee. He wasn't first. He didn't land on Earth with a sonic screwdriver. He didn't have the sonic screwdriver till, what was it, Fury from the Deep?
Fury.
Yeah, so
it's very difficult to sort of judge it. But I have the suspicion that it won't be my cup of tea. I'll just leave it at that.
Which is such a shame. Look at what we've just seen tonight. And Sean, our new Whoer. Sean, is there anything we've missed regarding criticisms or how it could be saved and we just haven't mentioned certain formula?
No, I mean it's dead, isn't it? But I mean, if I had a chance to save it, it's dead. It's absolutely finished. The only thing that will get a series 3 is Spite, which is probably why we'll get one.
Yeah.
But for me, if I had the chance to say undo the wrongs, if you will, or I would, because I did at one point think RTD was playing a long game with Mavity, with things kind of not making sense.
It's coming back.
I always thought
It's coming back,
that
man.
this. I always thought this fantasy thing was something had gone wrong. So I would have it start off. The Doctor hears rumors the Time Lords are trying to get in contact with him. Obviously, they're meant to be gone, so things aren't making sense. Things haven't been making sense for a while. The Doctor thinks Flux took out half the universe, but it appeared. Mavity, the Master said, "I'm not from Gallifrey," and the Time Lords are basically trying to tell him what you believed. Like, things aren't making sense. Something, and I know we've seen it a million times before, but something's, and I'm not a writer, something's fractured the universe and parallel worlds are bleeding into each other and things just aren't making sense. And I think that might be a good way to try and get the show, to get that tonal change in there that you need, to get it back on track. Because if you went from this first series directly into a second series of dark stories, I think, as much as we'd love it, I think it would be very much like, what the hell's just happened here? And they also don't think Ncuti is capable of it. So I think you need to have some kind of transition period if it's got any chance whatsoever of surviving. But at this point, it doesn't. Because all this talk of pausing it and giving it a rest, it doesn't need a rest or a pause. It needs to change.
It's interesting that if anyone sees the latest Doctor Who magazine, the Chris Eccleston special, Mal Yun, who was one of the executive producers in 2004-5, makes some interesting points. Now, he, did Brookside, various things. Now, he said they wanted Doctor Who back, yeah, and they wanted Doctor Who back with enough episodes so that it was very kind of present in the TV landscape across a year calendar, just like in the old days. And so, you had the 13 episodes, then you had the Christmas special and all the rest of it. And I find we're missing a trick now. And John Yulden said this, he was going to be on tonight, and I totally agree with him. This Sea Devils spin-off, 5 episodes as part of the Disney deal, I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but the point is there's 5 Doctor Who episodes that we've lost. This obsession with the Who-niverse, I actually think it's cart before the horse. Establish Doctor Who again, get it winning the viewers back, make Doctor Who the thing, and spin off if it's demanded. We seem to be doing the spin-off before the Doctor Who show is even, resuscitated.
I did consider that maybe it was a long game.
Do you know what the
he was
spin-off
playing?
Go on, Daryl, go on.
Yeah, what Sean was saying about a long game, I did consider that might be a possibility. But I think if he was going to do that, he should have done it over the 3 specials and then reset for series 1. I think that would have been the way to do it. 3 specials should have been enough to do a sort of play a long game and introduce this sort of fractured fictional sort of weird version of the universe and then resolve it over the course of the first proper series, perhaps. But to leave it between one series and the second series with people generally sort of not very impressed with series 1 seems a very risky thing to do if it is a long game.
Yeah. Well, we've believe it or not, we've come to the end of a massive show, and we've covered a lot of things. And there's loads we haven't discussed because as Doctor Who fans, there's a lot to mention. But first of all, I want to thank everybody who's given me their time, and please, everybody in the thread, write to us if you've got any suggestions for any other big debates you want us to discuss. Jeremy, thank you again for giving me your time.
No problem.
We will meet again, I know. Sean, you've got your channel. Do you want to give it a shout out?
Yeah. First, apologies. I've had terrible internet trouble tonight. I don't usually have a lag, so I have tried to jump in at the gaps, but I'm behind. Yeah, so I'm from the Review It Yourself podcast. I can avoid a webcam, but I don't want to have my face on screen. It's that stunning. You just look at me and you wouldn't listen to the content. So yeah, I do film reviews podcast. It's been going about 3.5 years with my co-host Sarah, who's from the south of England. But give her a chance; she's lovely. And we basically just talk about films. We've just done an episode on Doctor Who 20 years later. We went back and looked at Rose because we're both, you know, that generation with New Who. And we've just put an episode out where I interview a relative of J. Bruce Ismay, the chairman of the Titanic, on a book he's written about the perceptions around the Titanic and that kind of thing. So there's all sorts going on. You can find it wherever you get your podcasts. But thanks for having me on.
That's okay.
It's been great.
And Daryl, of course, thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for that fantastic package. And obviously, I'd love you to come on again. But thank you, Daryl, for your contributions and especially that illustrated package tonight.
Thank you. You've said a lot of kind things about it. I appreciate it.
Absolutely loved it. Christian, it's always a pleasure. Thanks again for you being on and giving you your time. You're a very busy man too. And I know 2 hours is a long time, and I thank you. I'm always grateful to you all, and obviously love to have you all on again. So that was the big debate this week, folks. Write to us, you know where. But thank you very much, and good night.
Ta-ta.